I have been a volunteer reading companion at Aldermere Children's Hospital for 11 years, and in all that time I have sat in more ward day rooms than I can count. I have read aloud from adventure novels and picture books and the occasional chapter of natural history, whichever the child in front of me required. I have learned to read a room the way I once learned to read a classroom, the temperature of it, the particular quality of the quiet, what the air is doing. I thought, at 70, that I had seen most of what a hospital ward could offer. I had not seen Robbie Finch play the piano. He had been my Tuesday companion for 6 weeks by the time the patron came. A boy of 9, small even for 9, with an economy of movement that the illness had made more pronounced, and a habit of keeping his hands folded in his lap as though conserving something. He was not a difficult child. He was not, in the usual sense, a particularly easy one. He answered questions with complete and unhurried accuracy, said precisely what he meant, and considered things for a long time before speaking. He had worked through 2 volumes of illustrated natural history, 1 naval adventure novel of some 300 pages, and the first 4 chapters of a book about lighthouses that I had not expected him to like but which he had received with the same measured interest he gave to everything. He had never, in 6 weeks, mentioned music. He had mentioned lighthouses at some length. He had a particular theory about the relationship between the height of a light and the curvature of the earth that he explained to me over 2 separate Tuesdays with the patience of a much older person. He had strong opinions about coastal fog. He had told me, with the same measured tone he used for everything, that when he grew up he would like to be a marine biologist or possibly someone who maintained navigational instruments. He had not mentioned, in any of these conversations, that he could play the piano. He had not, to my knowledge, gone near it. The piano in the day room was a chapel upright, one of the old kind, dark walnut casing, slightly yellowed keys, the sort of instrument that schools used to own before they acquired keyboards with weighted action and headphone jacks. It stood against the far wall between a notice board hung with the children's drawings and a plastic chair with a cracked armrest. I had walked past it every Tuesday for 11 years. I do not believe I had ever heard it played. Sir Edmund Ryle arrived at 2:30 on the 2nd Thursday of October. He was the hospital's longest-serving arts benefactor, a man of considerable means and, one felt, considerable awareness of those means, and he had brought with him a small delegation, a photographer, a woman from the hospital's communications office, and 2 junior members of his charitable foundation. The ward sister, Sister Brenda Alcott, had arranged a modest welcome. The children had been tidied. The day room had received fresh flowers. I was in the corner with Robbie, finishing the lighthouse chapter. The entourage moved through the ward with the brisk efficiency of people on a schedule, pausing at bedsides, nodding at drawings, the photographer composing 1 shot and then another. Sir Edmund had a particular way of addressing children, a genial, slightly theatrical warmth that stopped just short of actually listening, and the children received it with the polite detachment of those who had seen many adults perform for them. When they reached the day room, Sir Edmund paused. His eye fell on Robbie, who had set the book down in his lap and was watching with his customary level attention. Then Sir Edmund looked past him to the piano. "Now there's a picture," he said, addressing Sister Alcott with the ease of someone suggesting a table arrangement. "Have the lad give us a little tune, would you? Something simple, just for the cameras. Lovely bit of color for the appeal." He said it the way a man says such things when he has spent a long time in rooms where people do as he suggests. Sister Alcott looked at Robbie. The photographer angled toward the piano. The communications woman made a small encouraging gesture. Robbie looked at the piano for a moment. Then he looked at me. I don't know what I gave him in return, some reflexive nod, some nothing, the face of a woman who did not know what was about to happen. He set the lighthouse book down on my chair, very precisely, spine up so as not to lose the page. He rose from his seat and crossed the day room to the chapel without hurry and without comment, and he lifted the fallboard in 1 smooth motion. He settled onto the bench. He did not adjust it. He sat the way you sit at something you know exactly, without needing to learn it each time. He placed his hands in his lap for just a moment, that same folded, conserving gesture, and then he put them on the keys. He closed his eyes. What came out of that old piano, in that worn linoleum room with its notice board of children's drawings and its plastic chairs and its cracked armrest, was the opening phrase of the meditation from Thais. I recognized it a bar behind the people who know music properly, the way you recognize a language you studied once and thought you had forgotten. A melody of such unembarrassed feeling that the first time I heard it properly I had been in a concert hall and the woman beside me had quietly begun to weep before the second phrase. Here, in a children's day room, on a battered upright, played by a 9-year-old with his eyes closed, it arrived in the room the way clear weather arrives, all at once, and filling everything. The photographer's camera came down. I did not see it happen, but I heard it, the small mechanical click of someone setting a lens cap back in place, or simply lowering his hands to his sides. I heard it the way you hear small sounds in a space that has gone completely quiet, because the room had done exactly that. It had gone quiet in the particular way that rooms go quiet when the thing inside them has changed. Sir Edmund had stopped mid-gesture. He was a man accustomed to occupying a room, to being its hinge, and the thing that had happened to his face was unfamiliar to it. He stood very still. His hands were at his sides. Sister Alcott had her hand over her mouth. Robbie played. He played with his eyes closed throughout, and the piece did what it does in the hands of someone who knows it from the inside. It moved through its grief and its tenderness and its long, clean ache without announcement. The melody lifted and turned and breathed and returned. There is a place, about a third of the way through the meditation, where the melodic line rises and then seems to pause, to reconsider, before the continuation. It is, I have thought since, the musical equivalent of a door reopening. When Robbie reached that passage, I heard the woman from the communications office draw breath. I did not look at her. I kept my eyes on Robbie's hands. On that old chapel, in that room, it was not a polished performance. It was something other than polished. It was the piece as a child carries a piece when he has heard it so many times it has become part of the structure of him, something as natural as breathing, as personal as a name said in the dark. There were moments where the tone was not even. There were places where a trained listener would have heard a 9-year-old working at the edge of what he could manage. But there was also something that all the technical instruction in the world cannot put there and cannot take away, the sense, unmistakable, that the person playing knew exactly what the music was for. One of the nurses had been standing in the doorway. I became aware, at some point, that she was no longer there. I kept my eyes on Robbie, I think because I did not trust myself to look anywhere else. His face was still. Not the stillness of effort or concentration, but the stillness of a person somewhere else, returned, for the duration of this music, to a room or a voice or a time that I would never have access to. His hands moved across the keys as if they had always known where to find each note, as if they had been doing this alone, all along, in some room of the day I knew nothing about. The meditation runs approximately 5 minutes in a formal performance. I could not have told you how long Robbie played. I know that when the final phrase arrived, the long singing line of it that does not so much end as yield, the room had found the particular depth of quiet that is not the absence of sound but the presence of something that has made sound unnecessary. The last note faded in the way that last notes fade in certain rooms, slowly, because no one is prepared to let it go. He sat with his hands in his lap for a moment after. Eyes still closed. Then he opened them and put the fallboard back. He turned on the bench to face the room, which had not moved, and he said, in the same unhurried, accurate way he said everything, my mum used to play it. I promised her I'd learn it properly. She taught me the left hand before she went into hospital the last time. I worked out the rest after. He said it as a statement of fact, the way he said all facts. There was nothing in it designed to wound or to claim. It was simply what was true. Sir Edmund Ryle stood in the middle of the Aldermere Children's Hospital day room, with his photographer and his communications officer and his junior foundation staff, and he did not speak. I watched the process of it, the thing that was moving through him, the way it moved through people who have spent a long time being the most important thing in a room and have suddenly, without preparation, encountered something they cannot purchase or arrange or photograph for an appeal. He raised a hand, once, toward Robbie, and then put it down again. His mouth opened and found nothing, and closed. Sister Alcott excused herself. She went out of the room the way you go out of a room when you have somewhere specific to be, except that I saw her through the small window of the day room door, and she was standing in the corridor with her hand pressed flat to the wall, not going anywhere at all, just standing, waiting for her face to become her professional face again. I did not look at anyone else. I did not trust my own face either. I went to Robbie. I sat down in the plastic chair beside the bench, not the one with the cracked armrest, the other one, and I put his lighthouse book in his lap, still open at the page. He received it without surprise. That was a great deal more than simple, I said. He looked at me for a moment and then at the piano and then at his book. She said I had good hands, he told me. She said they were the right shape. He turned the page with some deliberation. I want to know what happens at the lighthouse. So I read to him. That was 4 years ago. I have read to other children in other day rooms since, and I have walked past the chapel in that particular ward on my way to other chairs. The notice board of children's drawings has been changed entirely. The plastic chair with the cracked armrest was replaced, I think in the second year. Sir Edmund Ryle endowed a music program at Aldermere Children's Hospital that autumn. It was substantial. I learned of it from a letter that Sister Alcott sent me. She did not explain the reasoning in the letter, and she did not need to. There are some things for which the reasoning is not the point. I think about Robbie's hands. The way they moved across those old keys, unhurried, certain, entirely their own. The way a 9-year-old who had never told me about music, never once, in 6 weeks of Tuesdays, mentioned the piano, carried it inside him so quietly that there was nothing to see until the moment he lifted the fallboard and showed you. His mother had told him he had the right hands. He had spent the time he had learning to prove her correct. I have read aloud from a great many books in my life. I have delivered a great many speeches at prize givings and parent evenings and retirement functions. I have said the words that were needed in difficult rooms and important ones and ordinary ones. I thought I knew what it was to use language with precision, to choose the right word and put it in the right place and trust it to do what you needed. I learned something different that afternoon in the Aldermere day room. That some promises have no words. That some are kept entirely in the hands.